Good morning, students. Welcome to the lecture of Real Analysis 1. In today's lecture, we are going to start unit number 3 called as Multivariable Differential Calculus. In the last lecture, we have completed our second unit of Riemann-Stieltjes integration. In the last lecture, we have studied the conditions of integrability and a theorem which depends on the refinement of partition. Very similar to Riemann integration, we have proved that with respect to refinement, the upper sum decreases, lower sum increases of Riemann-Stieltjes integration, and that's why we have proved the theorem. The theme of a proof is also similar to the proof we have given in Riemann integration topic. Also, we have proved the condition of integrability for the Riemann-Stieltjes integration. Also, we have seen a theorem which will help us to prove or which will help us to solve the examples of Riemann-Stieltjes integration. Then that is how to integrate a given function with respect to another monotonically increasing function. For this, we have seen that integration f d alpha is equal to integration f. We have to find the derivative of that alpha, and that is alpha dash of x into d of x. And if we do so, this Riemann integration reduces to Riemann-Stieltjes integration reduces to Riemann integration. And if once we reduce to Riemann integration, we know how to solve these examples. We have two different methods to solve. First method, we can use the Darboux sums and the method of finding upper integral, lower integral and showing them equal. Or one can use the Riemann sum method, in which we are supposed to find out the limit of the Riemann sum. If the limit exists, function is integrable. If not, it is not integrable. Now let us move towards the third unit of multivariable differential calculus. Now, as the name suggests, we are going to deal with the function of many variables, and using differential calculus, we are going to understand the geometrical aspect or the need of having the new derivative in this unit. Already we have studied ordinary differential equation and partial differential equation. In today's lecture, we will just recall the basic notions related to the ordinary and partial differential equation. As we have discussed, we know the geometrical interpretation of ordinary derivatives, that is a function of one variable, is it is giving us the rate of change of the given function at the given point. Also, it is giving us the slope of the tangent at the particular point. Let me write. First, we will start with ordinary differentiation. If we are dealing with ordinary differentiation, it is truly for the functions of one variable of the type y equal to f of x. Okay. The two aspects we know that derivative gives us the slope of tangent at given point. Slope of tangent at given point. The second one we know is this gives us the rate of change of a function. With respect to what? Rate of change of function with respect to x, na, the independent variable. That is, this second one tells us that how the function is going to change as we change the values of x. Okay. Before going to this, let me just recall what is the first principal definition of this derivative of the function y equal to f of x. The symbol we have used is df by dx. Correct? No? What is the first principal definition of derivatives? Yes, students. First principal definition.
f of x plus h minus
Plus
f of
minus
x.
f of x upon h, limit h tends to 0.
Good. Limit h tends to 0. Okay. This h is actually x plus h minus h, no? X plus h minus x. Right now? This h is actually x plus h minus x. That is, this numerator gives us the change in the function, or change in y should I call? This is change in f or y. Anything you can write. Correct now? And what this denominator tells us? This is change in x, no? Change in x. Therefore, whatever is this ratio we have considered, this is actually an increment ratio, which is change in dependent variable upon change in independent variable. Correct? Because this is giving us the rate of, this is giving us the increment. Okay. Do anyone know what is the formula for the slope of a line in two-dimensional plane? Suppose this
Y
is
is
a
equal to
line.
mx plus c.
No, I'm asking you the slope of a line. 2-point formula for slope. Suppose this point is having the coordinate x1, y1, and this is the point
x2
having the
minus
coordinate
x1
x.
upon y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus.
Good. Y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1, and generally we are denoting with the symbol. Therefore, this is the slope of line PQ. Correct now? Slope of the line PQ. That is, this numerator is again change in y. Correct? Change in y, no? Y2 minus y1. And what is x2 minus x1? This is change in x. Therefore, whatever is, this is an increment ratio, and this increment ratio is nothing but the slope we have defined. This increment ratio is nothing but slope of the given line. Therefore, if we just compare this definition, is just remove this limit time b. Okay, we just remove the limit, and what will this this increment ratio suggest us? This increment ratio suggests us the line, slope of the line, na? Joining which 2 points? Joining the 2 points having the coordinate x and x plus h as the x coordinate. Correct now? Therefore, let us just draw the function and we will try to understand how this is giving us the first geometrical interpretation, slope of the tangent at the given point. Therefore, let me just draw a function, arbitrary function. Okay. Say this is my curve y equal to f of x. No doubt we are in a two-dimensional plane xy. Okay. Now what we have to do? We will find out 2 points with the coordinate x and x plus h. Okay. Let this be a coordinate value x, and somewhere here let it be x plus h. Therefore, what is the increment in this x coordinate we have observed? Is it th? Correct now? Now let me find out the corresponding points on the given function. Therefore, let me write this. Let this be a point, say P. Okay. Let this be a point, say Q. I hope you are listening to me very carefully.
Yes, ma'am.
Therefore, these are the 2 points. Let me write the points here. This is P and this is Q. Instead of writing the points here, I will write their y coordinates. Okay. These are the 2 points. These are the 2 points. What are the y coordinates of these 2 points? Can anyone tell me the y coordinates? Here.
F of x and f of x plus h.
Good. This is f of x and this is f of x plus h. Therefore, the point P has the coordinate x and f of x. Okay. That of Q has the coordinate x plus h and f of x plus h. Okay. The 2 points we have found. Now let me join this line. Let me join the 2 points by a straight line. Okay, good. If it looks like a straight line, it is okay. If not, you have to assume that it's a straight line. Okay. Now let us consider this ratio, f of x plus h minus f of x upon h. Therefore, if I take this ratio, may I say this will be the slope of the line PQ? What is slope of line PQ? Tell me the slope.
F of x plus h minus f of x upon x plus h minus x.
Good. This is x plus h minus x. Okay. Where x gets cancelled and v remains with f of x plus h minus f of x upon h. That is increment in the function divided by increment in the independent variable. Therefore, if I just not put this limit, this ratio gives me the slope of the line PQ joining the 2 points. Slope of the line PQ, where the point P is x f of x and the point Q is with coordinate x plus h and f of x plus. Now apply the limit h tends to 0. Now we will apply limit h tends to 0. What will happen if I apply h tends to 0? What I have to do? I have to, if I keep this h is tending to 0, therefore this point is going towards this point, now x point. making this difference h smaller and smaller, h tending to 0. Then what is the effect on these 2 points P and Q?
They
This point
coincide.
P and Q will overlap with one
Yes,
another.
the point Q will travel along the line. The point Q will travel along the line and it will be going to overlap with P. Okay, therefore, instead of this chord, what will be the position of your line now? This is a
Tangent.
chord now. Now this becomes a tangent. This becomes a tangent. Therefore, what is this increment ratio for limit h tends to 0 gives us? Instead of slope of a
tangent.
chord, this is slope of a tangent. Good. Okay. Therefore, this is the slope of the tangent at which point? At x point. Slope of the tangent at x point. I think this we have studied somewhere in 12th standard. You might have forgotten this. Okay. Is the point clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
Slope of a tangent. Now we will try to understand how it is giving you the rate of change of a function with respect to x, right? This is for point number 1 we have explained. This is the explanation of point number 1. Now let me explain point number 2, how this is going to give us the rate of change. I think I have taken a small example and we have tried to discuss it now. We will try to understand how it is rate of change with respect to x. Let me just repeat the definition. I think you all should know that this can be also written as limit fx minus fy upon x minus y. What will be the limiting value then?
X minus y tending to 0.
Good, very good. X minus y tends to 0. Therefore, these two definitions are similar. Only we have to, anyhow, we want to take these points closer to one another, x and x plus h. Now, here also, if x minus y tends to 0, x and y are coming closer to one another. The example we were discussing is, I think x square, na? I have told you. F of x is equal to x square. What is its derivative? F dash of x is the symbol we are using and it is 2x. I don't know the point with what I have taken. Let me take x equal to 2. Now at x equal to 2, what is the value of the derivative? F dash of
4.
x? Yes, it is 4. F dash of x is equal to 4. Therefore, what this tells us? This tells us that at any point x, the rate of change of a function with respect to independent variable is 4 times. Or the function changes 4 times with respect to the independent variable. Function changes with the 4 times with respect to the independent variable. Now let us check whether it is going to give you exactly or not. Okay. Let me write x values. Let me write y values as well. Here let me write the function as y equal to f of x. Y equal to f of x. Therefore, let us write x and y values. If I take x value 2, what is y value? 4.
4.
If I take 5, this is 25. Where it is? Okay. Now we want to check whether the change in x is 4 times, whether the change in y is 4 times change in x or not. Change in y is 4 times change in y, change in x or not. Correct? What is change in x? What is delta x? Difference between the two values. 3?
3.
What is delta y?
21.
21.
21. Now whether change in y is 4 times change in x? How many times it is?
7.
7 times.
This is 7 times. But what we want? 4 times. But here one thing we are forgetting. This limit h must be tending to 0. Here what is the h value between the two? Two different values of x, 2 and 5. H is 3, na? Therefore, this is a bigger difference actually. Therefore, let us just reduce the difference between the x values, right? So let me take another pair of values. So say 3, 2 and 3. Again the value is 4 and here it is 9. Now change in x is 1. Change in y is 5. Correct? Now change in y is how many times of change in x? 5
5 times.
Okay, therefore this is also not going to do. Therefore let us again reduce the difference between the values of x and y. Let me reduce more the difference. H tends to 0 we want. Huh? Therefore let us take 2 and 2.5. Therefore this is 4 and here it is. Square of 25 is 625. Na? Therefore 2.5 has square 6.25. Delta x 0.5. Delta y 2.25. Correct. Na? How many times it is now? 0.5. 2.5 upon 5. 0.5. Is it 4.5 times? See, now we are going towards 2. Correct now? If you have any difficulty in my explanation, you just stop me and ask. Now let us reduce the difference to 2 to 2.1. H I have taken 0.1 now. Square of 21 is 441. So this is 4.41. Delta x is 0.1. And what about delta y? 0.41. Therefore, how many times this will be now? Is it 4.1 times? Let us reduce the difference again. Still smaller we want. Okay, therefore, this is 2. Let me take directly 2.001. 2.001. This is 4. And already I have calculated the values. The square of this number is 4.004001. Therefore, delta x is having the value 0.001 and delta y is having the value 0.004. Now this is 4 times. Now this is 4 times. For how this is giving us a rate of change? Change in y is 4 times change in x only if the change in x is very small. Only if the change in x is very small. Therefore, we should not forget this. X minus y tends to 0. Or if I take in terms of x and x plus h, this h tends to 0. Just have a look to the h values we have taken. What is h here? We have taken 3. What is h we have taken here? 1. Later we have taken h is 0.5. Then it is 0.1. Then this is 0.001. But as you go on reducing the difference between the two values x and y, that is, as your delta x is small, as your delta x tends to 0, h tends to 0, your change in the function is 4 times change in your independent variable. 4 times change in your independent variable. Change in y is 4 times change in x. This is the another interpretation of the derivatives rate of change with respect to x. Is this point clear to everyone? Therefore, this
Yes,
f
ma'am.
dash of x is equal to 4. True only if the change in your independent variable is very, very small. Change in your independent variable is very, very small. Okay, I hope both the points are clear to everyone. If you have any difficulty along with this, you can stop and you can ask. If not, we will go for partial derivatives. Clearly understood up to this? Should I go for the next
Yes,
point
ma'am.
of partial derivatives? Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll go for next point, partial derivatives. Okay. Can anyone tell me why this concept was derived, partial derivatives? Because we have already one derivative with us, no? Ordinary derivative. This is very clear, no? Ordinary derivative is defined for the function of one variable only. Then what to do for the functions of 2 variable, 3 variable, etc. That is a function of this type, say z equal to f of xy. Therefore, a new concept was generalized to find out the derivative of functions of more than one variable, but still this works only for the functions of the type RNA to R. RNA to R means what? The functions of many variable to a real valued function. Correct now? Here also what is the nature of your function? The function is of two variables, but it is a real value. That is this particular function is of the type R2 to R. Correct now? R2 to R. Therefore, ordinary derivative helps us to find out the derivative of the functions of one variable only. Therefore, this derivative is being developed for finding the derivatives of functions of more than one variable. In this session, we will deal with the functions of two variable only. Okay, now we'll try to discuss. Now, as we have the idea with us to find out the derivative of function of one variable only, therefore to find the derivative of functions of two variables, the idea was introduced that we will take the change of a function in one variable only without changing the another independent variable. Correct now? How many independent variables we have here? Two variables, x and y. Therefore, the idea is introduced simultaneously. Instead of changing both the variables, the idea is introduced such that keep one of the variable fixed. Keep one of the variable fixed and let us change only one variable at a time. Okay, or you can interchange this. That is, you can change, you can keep the x variable fixed and you can just change the values of y. And while doing so, only one variable is allowed to change. Only one variable is allowed to change and another variable is being fixed. Whenever I am saying the value is being fixed, means what? We will keep the value of one of the variable to be constant. Okay, and we will allow the function to change in one variable only. We are allowed to change in one variable only. Okay, that is, suppose we have an elastic material or square of the size square sheet, say, and it was put in a three-dimensional space like this. Okay, this is the square sheet elastic material. Like this, suppose we have a square sheet elastic material with us. Okay, now here if I am going to change it with respect to x, keeping y as it is, then what to do? We have to stretch this material so that it will take a new shape like this. We are going to change in one direction only. Instead of changing the surface in two simultaneous directions, we are going to change it in one direction only. This was the logic used while introducing the partial derivative. That is, keeping one variable fixed and changing with respect to another variable. Therefore, what happens if I keep one of the variable constant? Say I am going to keep y fixed. Let us keep y fixed. If I am going to fix y, if I am going to fix the value of y for some constant, say y equals to b is some constant, then may I say now if I keep the value of y as b, the function of two variable f of xy is now treated as a function of one variable only, because the function will be of this type, f of x and b. Why? Because once we fix the position of that surface in a three-dimensional space, then we are going to fix the value of y and we will make the first surface to change in one variable x only. Okay, that is what I mean. Therefore, now this becomes a function of one variable only. This becomes a function of one variable only. Okay, now we have to understand what is the geometrical aspect of this function. Okay, you have to bear with me because I am very bad at the drawing. In which space, in which dimensional spaces we have to consider the situation? No,
Two dimensions.
Three dimensions. Z equal to f of xy. This surface we cannot show in 2D plane. These are the three variables, two independent, one dependent. So this surface is going to be there in three-dimensional spaces. Correct, now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, therefore let me draw the third axis. say Z. Okay, I'll call this as X, this as Y, and let this be Z. Let this be Z. Now I'm drawing one surface. Let this be a surface. Any sheet, any you can say any sheet of paper in a three-dimensional space with some specific structure. Okay. Now what we are going to do? This is Z equal to f of x, y. Now what we have done? We have kept the value of y constant, that is y is equal to b. Therefore now this reduces to a function of one variable. Therefore the nature is z equal to f of x type. Now this becomes a curve, no? This is actually a surface. This is a surface in three-dimensional spaces. Now whenever we keep this, one of the variable, this becomes a curve in 2D. Correct now? Now let us check how we are going to get this as a curve. How should I convert this surface to a curve? Now let me keep y is equal to b in this same sketch. What is the interpretation of y is equal to b? What this y is equal to b is going to represent? What y equal to b represents in 2D plane? Y equal to b.
X equal to 0, ma'am.
Y equal to b, what it represents in 2D plane is the question. X equal to 0, I have not understood. Y equal to b is what?
Line
Line on Y,
point B.
B is there.
B on
Yes. Correct, na? Horizontal line cuts at y equal to b. That is, this will be a line perpendicular to y-axis. Correct? If it is x equal to a,
Line perpendicular to y-axis.
ah,
Line parallel to y-axis, sorry.
line perpendicular to x-axis. Correct now? But if these two sketches I want to draw in 3D, same y equal to b, what it is going to represent?
A plane.
Yeah, it's a plane. What is the position of your plane? Very similar to this now. This line is perpendicular to y, parallel to the axis x. Here, this is the line perpendicular to x, parallel to y. Here also, if I want to draw y is equals to b, therefore this plane should be perpendicular to y and parallel to a plane xz. Correct now? Therefore, is it of this type? Let's check. As I have already mentioned, I am very bad at the drawing. You have to just be a little. This is the surface now, plane, which cuts at y equal to b. This point is y equal to b. And this plane is parallel to your xz plane. This is your xz plane. No? This plane is parallel to your xz plane. Now, if I want to draw it for x equal to a, x equal to a, this plane will be perpendicular to x and parallel to
YZ plane.
YZ plane. Very good. And this point is A. So this is the plane y equal to B. This is the plane x equal to A. Similarly, one can find out plane z equal to C. What will be a plane z equal to C? Shall I show you here also? What will be the location of your plane z equal to C? Is it of this type? Parallel to XY plane. Correct now? Now y equal to b, we have to draw in this sketch also. y equal to b we have to draw in this sketch also, and we have to take the intersection of both the sheets, because y equal to b we have kept in the surface function. Okay, we have kept this value now, y equal to b. Where we have kept this value? We have kept this value in the equation of a surface. Whenever we are keeping this value, mean we are interested in taking the intersection of both. Therefore, here, whatever is this resultant obtained, this is the resultant of the surface z equal to f of xy and a plane y equal to b. And whatever is this results into a curve z equal to f of xb. Okay, let me just try to draw the plane. Now we are going to take the intersection of this plane. We are going to take the intersection of this plane with the surface. This surface part behind your, this sheet part behind your surface, I am showing with a dotted line. Let me draw big dots. Okay. Now we will take the intersection of a surface and a sheet. What will happen? What will happen? What kind of sketch we will get? Is it of the curve type? Suppose we have a watermelon in our hand and we are cutting that watermelon with a knife. Okay. Time being, assume the watermelon is exactly spherical shape, and if I cut it from the, if I cut that watermelon with a knife, what kind of shape you are going to get after cutting boundary part?
Semi-sphere.
Huh? Yes. Is it a circle?
Semi-sphere, ma'am.
No. Curve I am asking you, the boundary.
Yes, ma'am. Circle.
Circle, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a circle. Okay. If we cut a sphere into two parts, it will be no doubt a semi-sphere. Now what I am asking, instead of cutting that watermelon with a knife, what I will do, I will take a square sheet, thin square sheet, and I will just insert in the watermelon. And I want the intersection of watermelon with the sheet. Okay, now it gives you the disc. Correct now? It's give that circular disc, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now here also, now what we are going to do, whatever is the surface we have, suppose this is the surface, suppose a page we have in a 3D space, and we are going to cut that surface with this plane. Then what is the intersection? Is it a curve, and is of the type very similar to the surface shape of the surface? Okay, let us assume this red color is the intersection of a surface with this plane. With which plane? Y equal to B. I hope you are understanding. Okay, therefore this is nothing but a curve. What is the curve? This is the red color curve. Here I have shown this by red color. This is a curve. Okay. Now what we are going to do, once I obtain the curve, this will be a function of one variable, and we are interested in finding the derivative similar to ordinary derivatives. Then suppose I am taking the derivative at a point, suppose at the point y is fixed, no doubt, therefore I have to just fix out the value of x. Suppose at the point AB I am interested in finding the, this is the point AB. Okay, therefore this is the point AB0, because this is the point I have shown in the xy plane. And what are the coordinates of this point? Say C, I am calling this at. So what are the coordinates of point C? A, B, and whatever is the height Z. Whatever is the height Z. So for the point C on a curve we have taken, now let us take the derivative. And what the derivative says? This is the slope of the tangent. Now at this curve, how many tangents I can draw? One curve you have to imagine in 3D space, like this. At the point, how many tangents I can draw?
One.
Is it one only?
No, so many.
In the night.
This is actually a plane, na? Tangent plane. Correct, na? Plane is there, which is going to be tangent. If you can see me in camera, this is the curve, and we are finding the tangent. Therefore, this is the tangent plane. Okay, I hope my hands are visible to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is a plane possible. Means how many lines we can draw? Infinitely many lines we can draw. But among those infinitely many tangents, we were considering only one tangent which is in the direction of x-axis, or one can say which is which is parallel to the x-axis. Therefore, how many tangents I can draw at the point C, which is along x direction or parallel to x-axis? Only one, na? Only one among infinite.
Ma'am, will you explain one more time, please?
Okay, let me just draw the sketch and I'll explain. Why I am getting double lines? This doesn't look like straight line. Now you please imagine at this point C we are taking a tangent. Yeah. This is the tangent at C. See, look at my hands again. This is the curve. Okay, this is the curve in a three-dimensional space. We are finding a tangent like this. Okay, now there are infinitely many lines, but all those lines are passing through the point C. Let me explain with this. Another sketch. This is the curve we have. Okay, at this point we are interested in drawing the tangent. Now, as this is the point in a three-dimensional line, infinitely tangents we can draw. What is the location of the tangents? Is it like this? The plane we have, no? Let me draw a plane first. Among all those planes, we want one line which is along x-axis, and this is the only one line. Like this, it will be a plane, no? All these lines are passing through at tangent point C. Out of all these possibilities, we want one line tangent at this point and parallel to x-axis, and this is the only one line. This is the only one line. Correct, na? Suppose this is an arbitrary point we have. How many lines I can draw passing through this point? Infinite lines I can draw. But suppose I have given you a restriction that you have to draw a line from this point, but which is parallel to this line. Which is parallel to this line. Then how many lines you can draw?
Only one line.
Only one. This is what I am trying to explain. At this point C, infinitely many tangents are possible. Infinitely many lines which touches at point C can be drawn. But if we restrict a condition that the line should be parallel to x-axis, the line should be parallel to x-axis or in the direction of x-axis, then now along those infinite lines we will have only one line with us, and this line is nothing but the slope of the tangent, and whatever is the slope of the tangent at this point we will obtain. This is nothing but the partial derivative, and the partial derivative with respect to x. Therefore, this partial derivative with respect to x gives us the rate of change of function in x direction only. In x direction only. समजा आपण एका टेकडीवर उभारलो, एक मोठी टेकडी आहे, हिमालय पर्वतावर आपण गेलो. 3D सरफेस आहे ना हा, बरोबर? आता आपण काय करायचं आहे, एक डिरेक्शन फिक्स करायची. आपण जिथं उभारलं तिथं ओरिजिन अज्युम करायचा, उजव्या हाताला y ऍक्सिस अज्युम करू, डाव्या हाताला x ऍक्सिस, आपण स्वतः z ऍक्सिस. बरोबर? लक्षात येते? आता काय करायचं, x ऍक्सिस जी फिक्स आउट केली ना, त्या ऍक्सिस वरून चालत चालत निघायचं टेकडीवरून. तर आपल्या ज्या पाऊल खुणाने वाट ट्रेस होईल ना, तर ती काय प्रकारची वाट असेल? कर्व मिळेल ना आपल्याला, खाली वर दरी डोंगर, बरोबर? तर ती कर्व जाईल. आणि एक्स डिरेक्शनला जेव्हा आपण चालत जाऊ तेव्हा तो जो रेट ऑफ चेंज ऑफ फंक्शन जो असेल ना, खाली वर चेंज होत जातो फंक्शन, तर तो काय मिळेल तुमचा पार्शियल डेरिव्हेटिव्ह एफ एक्स. आणि तसंच तुम्ही वाय डिरेक्शनला गेलात तर काय मिळतो एफ वाय. वाय डिरेक्शनला एफ वाय. I hope you know the interpretation of the slope. If the slope is negative, what happens if the slope is positive? If the slope is positive, what kind of line you have? If the slope is positive at x equal, suppose we have the x-axis as well, what kind of line we will have? Slope positive means what?
Increasing value of x.
This is line. What kind of slope this line has? Positive or negative?
Positive, ma'am.
Positive.
What about this line?
Negative.
Negative.
ओके. म्हणजे थोडक्यात सांगायचं तर हा चढ असेल आणि हा काय असेल उतार असेल, बरोबर ना. आणि डेरिव्हेटिव्ह झिरो म्हणजे काय असेल हॉरिझॉन्टल लाईन, करेक्ट ना. दिस horizontal. Therefore, if you find the value of a slope of a given tangent at the given point, suppose the value is negative, means the value you are going to get in the decreasing type of curve it will be. If the value is positive, means the curve is going upward. If the value of the derivative is zero, therefore the whatever the curve you have is of flat nature. Right now, that's why we are writing the derivative of a constant function zero, no? Derivative of constant function is zero. Why? Because there is no change. The value is constant throughout. We are not getting any ups and downs in the curve. Correct? That's why the derivative is zero. Derivative zero means there is no effect of rate of change. Or if you change x, there is no effect in the change. If you change x, there is no change in y. If you change x, there is no change in y. If the derivative is positive, you will get the upside of the curve. If it is negative, you are getting down. Means ups and downs are approximated by knowing the value of the ordinary derivative at the given point. Okay. Therefore, partial derivative with respect to x gives you the slope of the tangent at the given point only in x direction. Okay. If you repeat the same process by keeping y constant, what kind of nature you will get? Same, na? At only the curve you have to plot a plane here at x position. Again, you will get a curve, and you, whatever the derivative you will find, it will give you the value fx and fy. Means it will be the rate of change of a function in y direction, or slope of the tangent of the given at a given point in which direction the tangent is taken in y direction. Okay. Therefore, finally one can have a conclusion that partial derivative helps us to find out the rate of change of a given function only in two coordinate axis direction. Once in x-axis direction, once in y-axis direction. Once in x-axis direction, once in y-axis direction. In other direction, partial derivative fails to give you the rate of change. Partial derivative fails to give you the rate of change, and that's why partial derivative unable to imply the continuity of the given function. That is, if the derivative exists at the point, at this point p say a b 0, but it fails to explain the continuity at the given point. Okay, I have explained both the geometrical interpretation of both the derivatives, ordinary derivative and partial derivative. If you have a doubt in this, you can explain. Or give me the 5 minutes, I'll explain how this continuity can be, cannot be sure by partial derivatives. At ordinary derivative, if the derivative exists, we say that the function is continuous. Correct, na? If the derivative
Yes, ma'am.
exists at a given point, the function is continuous. Why? Because whatever the limit we are writing here, limit h tends to 0 is actually limit h plus and limit h minus. No? Means whatever the value x we are considering here, this can be obtained from both the ways, from the right side and from the left side, and is giving you the actual value also. The rate of ordinary derivative gives the continuity at the given point, but partial derivative fails to imply the continuity. Let me just explain. Before writing, I have to write the continuity definition. No? continuity of a function of two variables. F of x, y, z. Okay, here let me write the definition. A function is said to be continuous at point AB of its domain. This is very similar to the definition of continuity in one variable. Domain of definition means on the domain of definition. If what if limit xy tends to AB, f of xy is equal to f of AB. Correct now? This is what we have written similar to first function in one variable. Okay, or what is epsilon delta notation? For epsilon greater than 0, there exists. Now we are not writing delta. Here we are writing a neighborhood. We are writing a neighborhood capital N of AB such that, what such that? Mod of f of xy minus f of AB Students, what is the definition? Mod of
Less
xy
than
minus
epsilon.
less than epsilon for all xy in the neighborhood. For all xy in the neighborhood. Let me explain you how the definition is very similar to the function in one variable. What is the definition we have written for the function in one variable? Mod of fx minus f of a less than epsilon whenever mod of x minus a less than delta. Correct? Now, in both the cases, here as it was a function of one variable, therefore the change is observed only on x-axis. Correct? Suppose this is the point x, and if you want to check the continuity, sorry, this is the point A, and if I want to check the continuity at this point, now what x we were taking? X minus a, x from the right, x from the left. Mod of x minus a less than delta means x belongs to a minus delta to a plus delta. Correct now? Therefore, this is the small neighborhood around a, x a minus delta to a plus delta, in which x is going to lie. Okay, and this is the only possibility to reach towards the point A on a real line on x-axis. Correct now? But if the same case I want to discuss in this three-dimensional case, then we have to cover all the possible ways to reach towards this point. No? Correct now? So let me show you how this is going to work in three-dimensional plane. Oh, sorry, three-dimensional space. Okay, this is the point AB in xy plane. This is the function z, whatever is your function. Now, how many ways are there to reach towards this point AB? A small neighborhood we have to draw. How many ways are there to reach towards the point AB? How many ways? Infinite ways. Infinite ways to reach AB, na? Now we have to cover all these infinite paths to cover the point AB. And that's why here we have written a neighborhood N of AB. For AB epsilon greater than 0, there exists a neighborhood N of AB such that in this whatever is the corresponding F images, suppose this is f of x and this is f of AB, this distance between the two must be less than epsilon. This is f of AB, say, and for this arbitrary point, we have a distance. Let me show it color. Suppose this is the arbitrary point xy in that neighborhood, then this is the image of AB. Okay, this is f of xy. And what is the distance between the two, f of xy and f of AB? It must be less than it. And this is true for all the points xy in its neighborhood. Okay, therefore, there are many ways to reach towards the point AB. That is, all the paths along which we can come towards the point AB are taken in order to check the continuity. But in partial derivative, we are getting the rate of change of a function only in two directions. In which two direction? In this direction along x-axis and along y-axis. That is, we know the nature of a function along x direction, along y direction only. We do not know the nature of a function along the arbitrary direction. Therefore, this information of partial derivative is insufficient in order to check the continuity of the given function at the given point AB. Therefore, partial derivative fails to imply the continuity. Partial derivative fails to imply the continuity at the point AB. That is, at point AB, if the partial derivative exists, if partial derivative exists at AB, then it may or may not be continuous. Unable to explain the continuity. Unable to explain continuity at AB. Correct? And this is why there is a need to derive a new kind of derivative called as a directional derivative, which will give you the rate of change of the given function in all possible directions so that it can help in continuity. In the next lecture, we will see what is the directional derivative, and we will see also whether it gives us the continuity or not. We will try to find out the answers of both these questions in the next lecture. Till then, if you have any difficulties in this today's lecture, you just unmute yourself and ask me. From student side, if you have the difficulties, you can ask. Otherwise, we will stop for today. Thank you for being with me for this lecture.